These new rules around rosters have put schools like Boston College in a very, very tough spot.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I am the host of the show. I've been this host for 5 years, and I'm also the publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. You know, you're getting your good Boston College news over here, and you're getting a great Boston College podcast over here at Locked On BC. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today's show, it's a lot of portal talk. There's going to be some changes in the roster. A quarterback has left. Another player has left. I'm going to talk to you about who those two are, why that quarterback ends one era and a new one begins. And then we're going to kick it off by talking about this portal in general. The spring portal, let's kick that off right now, is going to open today at midnight. The gates of Hades have opened as the second spring portal opens. And with the house settlement, there's rumors going around that all sorts of things have already happened. We already saw Nico at Tennessee leave because he wants more money. But there's more players that are going to go and leave before they can. They're going to get locked down with deals that are more. They've been watched more by this clearinghouse that's going to be coming out of this house settlement. So, what's this going to mean for Boston College? Well, my hope is that there's not going to be any surprises. That's the first thing. Like, we do not need a random surprise player to enter the portal. I have faith that Bill O'Brien and his staff have set the culture, made things fair, made things equitable and realistic for this roster so that guys are just not going to leave. I hope that's the case. The bigger issue heading into this portal is that roster number, and it's that 105. Now, when they first announced, I think they first kind of like leaked out that 105 number. It sounded great. Like, oh, wow, you can build up your roster bigger. That's great. You can give out more scholarships. But it's really the sword of Damocles here because that 105 also it's scholarships and preferred walk-ons. That, as Bill O'Brien has said multiple times, is brutal to the walk-on program. Now, for folks who just watch football on a Saturday and love BC for the guys that you see on the field, you don't get the importance of what the walk-ons mean. Watching practice last summer really opened my eyes. That these guys that don't get the rub and they don't get the accolades that the players like Grayson James and Lewis Bond and Turbo and all those guys get. They're out there running scout team. They're out there practicing against the ones. They are a vital part of this program. And that 105 is brutal because you take away the 105. You go back to what it was a couple years ago. You could have as many preferred walk-ons, I think, as you want because you're not really paying them. So you'd have like 30, 40 walk-ons and you could build an offense, you could build a defense, and they could go against your scholarship players. And these guys had a very valuable role. And on top of that, some of these guys would end up playing, Dennis Grossell, Joe Marinaro. There's been multiple stories of this. These are all going to go away. That's one big issue. And I know that kills Bill O'Brien. I know he hates that. And I get it. Like these are kids. These are kids that have planned out, their years of college, and some of them may end up losing their spots. We don't know what they're going to do. The other tough position is for BC. On top of the preferred walk-ons, schools like Boston, the schools throughout the country, they're working under the guidance that this 105 number is going to happen. Because if you've read Ross Dellinger of Yahoo's report earlier today, they don't sound like they're going to budge off of that roster limit. I hate that. And if you're wondering why there's a roster limit of 105, it's because of schools like Alabama, who find ways to just jam pack their roster with guys that should be scholarship, but they find like little loopholes to get them in. This is supposed to even the playing field. It doesn't. It does it by chopping off your nose to spite your face kind of thing, where it's really not helping at all. But that's what they're trying to do. That's the intent of this, and I still think it's garbage. Now, BC, the last I checked, I did my math, and I don't know. We'll talk about this in a second. I don't know if things have changed, but I looked at where the roster would be if everyone came aboard now. And the guys that come over the summer, there's 2 transfers, Mike Bumpus and Tommy Matheson. Both are Ivy League transfers coming over. And then there's like 13 recruits. I had the number at like 119. And now, obviously, there's things that have changed or whatever. That I don't know how they're going to get around that. There's 2 already in the portal. I don't know if there's, my thought is you make these rules and there's always ways to get around it. There's always ways to figure out a loophole to make things work. And my fingers are crossed. And this is not for the program itself. It's for the kids that are on that roster right now, that Bill O'Brien and his staff have figured out something that will keep them from having to cut all these kids. Because, yeah, maybe you don't know who James McGurko is. Maybe you don't know who Brady Clough is. Maybe you don't know who Shane Hannafin is. But they deserve to be there. They may not play, but they play a very valuable role. And just to cut them because of some new Congress and lawsuit type deal, it's garbage. So my hope is that there won't be a mass cut, because you want to keep these kids. But additionally, you want to get below that 105 anyways, because you may need to get some transfers. Maybe the staff, as we said on an earlier episode, they have identified areas of need. You got to get under that number again. You can't just keep bringing in more transfers. So I'm dying to see what happens, because it was at 119 in my brain when I first did some numbers. I pulled up their roster, added those up. I added up all the freshmen coming in, and then the 2 transfers. I got 119. Now there's 2 gone. You have Jacobe Robinson and Otto Hess. Those have both been announced. I wonder if there's a way to like change scholarships around, like somebody who's hurt, like a guy that's not going to come back. Like, you have him on your roster, but maybe like, do you take, is the way things are going to work now? Do you like take him off your roster and have them go to school on a regular scholarship, but it's not an athletic scholarship? You just kind of, play some funny numbers there. I could see other schools doing things like that. And maybe that's the way to get around it for BC. If you have guys that are already planning to miss the whole year, you remove them from your roster. Again, I don't know. I am not a legal person. I am not someone who understands the ins and outs of this stuff. I just see this and I'm wondering how BC is going to address it. In our second segment, there's already been 2 moves. I'll explain who they are and what that means to the program. I'll get into all that in just a moment. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how making bets is so easy on FanDuel. With the Celtics going for 2 in a row, I'm picking them, and I'm going to go with some player props. I love Derek White. I'm going to go for some 3-point. He set records this season. I'm going to go for some 3-point props with Derek White this playoff, and I think he's going to hit him. Plus, after the game tips, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus bets today. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. And I am your host, AJ Black. And I want to thank all our everydayers out there who have listened to every podcast this week. I want to say, folks, you guys are awesome. My numbers in the show listens has skyrocketed. I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe you guys are liking it. And that's what I'm doing it for. I want to give you guys an enjoyable podcast 5 days a week. We do this Monday through Friday, your team every day. and you get your Boston College news from me, an insider who knows what's going on. Now, on Tuesday, there were 2 new additions to the portal, and I knew one of them pretty far in advance. Now, Jacobe Robinson is a class of 23 commit of a player that was originally committed to Jeff Hafley. He came from Texas. He was a top 40 recruit on 247. A lot of solid recruit. Didn't have a huge offer list. He came in, had 2 years at BC, and he entered the portal on Tuesday night. Now, this to me seemed like a slam dunk. Like, you have to get rid of, you don't want to say that way, but you have to get some movement on your roster to get to the number that you need to. And watching it practice, Robinson didn't practice all that much. During scrimmages, he didn't play because Shaker Reisig has risen so much. Reisig clearly is the future of this program. Him and Lonergan, you're going to be looking at those two in the next couple of years. So you want to get him the snaps. You want to get Reisig the snaps. If Robinson isn't your guy, when you have, every snap counting and every snap is a chance to get better, why would you put it on Jacobe Robinson? Robinson was out there doing team drills and doing quarterback drills. It just when it was scrimmage time, you didn't see him play. So that to me was a big red flag. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, you know what? I think he's probably going to go. And this is the best thing for him too. Like, for BC, it's good because you now have an extra scholarship that you can remove. For Robinson, it's good because he has the physical tools to be good. He's a big kid with a big arm. And if he continues to develop, I could see him finding a spot. Where could he go? I'm thinking like a G5 program would be good for him. He's from Texas. There's a lot of G5 schools down there. Rice, North Texas, Texas State. Maybe he stays closer to home. He has 3 years of eligibility. He's good. I think he's got good enough that he could continue to grow. He can move, he can throw. He has some success down there. Then maybe he turns into a turn, 2 years there, and then a turn into a one chance at a Power 4 program as a senior. Could see that absolutely being the case for him. But with Reisig, Larnigan, and DJ Bordeaux coming in, you don't have a lot of, he was a Hafley guy. And sometimes Hafley guys work well with Bill O'Brien. That happens. But sometimes it doesn't. And this one doesn't seem like it was meant to be. And so he's going to end up going on to the portal. We'll see where he ends up. The second transfer was also, honestly, not surprised. Now, in my brain, and I'm not going to give out names because it's not fair to the kids. I have in my brain, if there's kids that are going to transfer, names that come up to my mind. And this name I honestly missed, but it actually makes a ton of sense. And that's Otto Hess. If you go back in our podcast, I think one of the first years I was doing this, Otto Hess was one of my first interviews I've ever done on the show. Great kid. He's from Midwest. Had a ton of Power 4 offers when he was coming out of high school. He played special teams. I think he played 120 snaps in the last couple of years, but he never found his role on the offensive line. And this spring, I didn't see him really picking up that either. Like, he just, there were guys like Kevin Klein and Logan Taylor and even Jaden LaFontaine seemed like they were more primed to get to that spot. So again, I have a motto, and I recommend it to all of my listeners. When a kid makes a choice to transfer, as long as it's not hurting his team, you support it. Now, there was one move last year that was kind of a dagger in the back of your team that I didn't support. And you guys, I don't even need to get into who that is. This one, it just wasn't working. So let him go and find a new spot. I don't know where Otto Hess will end up. I honestly, maybe a MAC school. Maybe a MAC school is a good choice for him. He's from the area. I love for these kids, it's probably the best idea to go play in front of your family. So go out in the MAC, find one of the schools out there and see if he can figure it out. But again, he wasn't going to probably play this year. This makes a ton of sense. Now we have to wait. I'm recording this at 10. I don't know how crazy the portal's going to be at midnight. I hope not, because I want to go to bed. But there's a potential that, when we wake up, there'll be some moves. I've heard from sources that I don't expect a ton of moves, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And then the bigger question is, will BC have enough, spots to go and address things in the portal? Or will Bill is Bill really saying what he believes, which is this team is deep? I see areas where I think that they need help, but he's the head coach. Does he feel that they don't? I'm looking on Twitter, and there's things that sometimes you see stuff. I saw Savon Huggins retweeting some kid from Mercer who's entering the portal. He's a defensive back. You can read tea leaves like that. I'm not sure. I haven't seen them linked really to anybody, but a whole bunch of names from across the country about to enter. You're going to see names, and if you want to go down the route that I do, this is how I evaluate every portal member that enters. Look at that name. Is there a local connection? Is there a need at the positional spot? Like, yeah, it's a local kid, but if he plays running back, you don't have spots for it, right? Is there a connection to the staff? That's the biggest one right there. Did someone recruit them? Like DJ Bordeaux, he wasn't a transfer, but he had a big connection to Jonathan DiBiaso. Do some of these kids know our coaches? That's going to be something to watch for. It's not just names. This roster, we saw it with his first transfer portal class. Bill goes heavily on guys that are aching to be playing, and some of them, especially like the Alabama guys, know people on his staff. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, in our final segment, with Jacobe Robinson gone, it's an end of an era. And I don't like talking a lot about Jeff Hafley anymore, but I think this is a conversation worth having. We'll get into that in just a moment. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. This is your team every day. And I want to thank all my everydayers out there who are enjoying this. If you have already subscribed, you're the boss. You're the GOAT. But if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button and become an everydayer who listens to Locked On BC. And if you're done with this episode, check out Locked On Celtics with the playoffs entering. You need to hear what John Corrales has to say. You can find him on YouTube or on wherever you get your podcasts, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Now, Jacobe Robinson exiting is the end of an era, and it's the end of the Jeff Hafley quarterback era. And oh boy, was this a rough era for Jeff Hafley. Now, you look at what he did. He started off his big, piece de resistance was landing Phil Jacobe, almost like remember they had the jet go and get him and all that good stuff. That was the big moment. And it was a quarterback. So that was great. It was a transfer. But look at his recruiting at the quarterback position, because it's frightening. He started off with Matt Reevy. He then got Peter Delaportis, Emmett Moorhead, Jacobe Robinson, Jonathan Montague. Now, many of those names, if you're not a sicko like myself who eats, breathes, and sleeps Boston College, you may have forgotten who they are. Matt Reevy. He might have played like 3 snaps in the Clemson blow-up when Hafley was there. He then transferred to some D3 school. I don't even remember the name of it. Did fine, but he was in D3. Didn't work. Peter Delaportis. Never saw him play. He transferred. He was here until this summer. Just never worked out. Didn't work out. Emmett Moorhead had those that game against NC State where you're like, wow, you have something, and then gets benched for Thomas Castellanos, and then went to Old Dominion, didn't play. He's in the portal. I don't know if anyone ever picked him up. I should probably pause this and see. I'm going to check this out. Yeah, I hit that pause button. I don't think anyone picked him up. Yeah, he didn't work. Jacobe Robinson never played, really. And then Jonathan Montague, they moved to wide receiver. This goes into what I've been mentioning over the last week. The Jeff Hafley quarterback era was a complete mess. You had 2 transfers that sort of worked. Thomas Castellanos, Phil Jacobe. but both ended up flaming out. Your recruiting at the position was atrocious. It just was not good. And so this is why I went and talked about yesterday that the Bill O'Brien era is so important, that you have guys here that can now recruit really high quality quarterbacks. And this is not a knock on those kids. I'm just saying that he's brought it to another level to get guys that are really ACC level, because you look at what ended up happening to each of them. All of them ended up not at ACC level schools. Thomas Castellanos and Phil Jacobe ended up transferring too, but they both went to power ACC schools, and Phil Jacobe ended up as a tight end, and Thomas Castellanos is going to be the starter at Florida State, and we have no idea what that will look like. So we end up by talking that Jeff Hafley just was not a good quarterback recruiter. And getting a coach here, Bill O'Brien, that understands that position, can evaluate recruits. Remember, just a week ago, they lost a guy that I said would be really good in Curran Berry, and then replaced him with another guy who's as good in DJ Bordeaux. They do this over and over again. They had a guy that's good, Grayson James. They bring in another guy who's good, Dylan Larnigan. Hit. Every guy's hitting. Grayson James is improving. You brought in Shaker Reisig. He's good. We have not seen what Furion and Ferrara is going to be, but you see my point here. The dark ages, when Hafley was here, it was not working. You change that up. You bring in a quarterback's heavy coach, and all of a sudden the most important position on your roster is in a much better spot. And I know I'm coming off as hard on Hafley, but look at Adazio too. Like, Adazio didn't do much. I mean, he had Chase Reddick, but I believe he was a Spaziani recruit, and he played that 1 year, and then it was transfer after transfer. It was Anthony Brown, but he had Tyler Murphy, he had Patrick Tolles, he had a year of Anthony Brown, or a year and a half of Anthony Brown, but he got hurt, and then Darius Wade just never ended up into anything. So it's been a couple of coaches that just have struggled. It was just the Hafley one I wanted to highlight, just how inconsistent it was for him. Now, on tomorrow's show, with the portal opening, I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to keep my eyes open too to see if BC's being connected to any of the transfers out there, because, as I said, linebackers, tight ends, I think there's needs that this roster could use. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But I'll also be there to talk about all the guys that may end up leaving, and will there be a surprise? I keep saying, and I keep hammering this, that I don't expect the big names to move. Even with all the changes going on and some of the surprises, it has not been a BC thing on the football team for a big surprise to happen. And I just don't see it happening again. So we'll have to wait and see. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. I'm sorry, X. Follow me on Twitter or X at AJBlack247. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I try to hit everybody up, right? You can check us out on YouTube if you're not already. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're up to 2,200 plus subscribers. That's a ton for a BC pod. I think I'm like half of what the BC account is already, and I want to get more. So make sure, if you haven't already, go over to YouTube, find Locked On BC, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Eagle Insider. We have one of the biggest memberships over there with some great writers. So check that out as well. 50% off a year subscription. You can help support us by joining that. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.